Yeah, good evening, all my esteemed ITT members, student members, and all my friends, ladies and gentlemen. I would begin the talk by introducing the earlier policies of the Government of India so that we can see what are the commonalities between the among the policies and what is special in the new policy. So now the national education policy, if we consider, Government of India first appointed Kothari Commission in 1960s. That was the first commission on education appointed by the Government of India. Consequent to the recommendation from the Kothari Commission, the first national policy on education was formed in 1968. And then after some time in 1986, government brought new policy with some modifications. And the government constituted task forces for that one. And there was a modification in the 1986 policy, which was brought in 1992. And then the new policy had come in 2020. So if we take the 1968 policy, this was based on the recommendation of the National Education Commission that was constituted or commissioned in 1964, known as the Kothari Commission, that was chaired by the UGC chairman of that time, Dr. Daulat Singh Kothari. Then the mandate was to examine all aspects of the educational sector of Indian education. That time, mostly India was having the degree programs of 2 years, and these degree programs were not recognized by the countries abroad. That was one concern. Then there was need for more inclusive approaches for education. So a very elaborate terms of reference was given for the commission to work on, and also to bring in guidelines and policies for the development of education in India. There were 19 task forces to support the commission. So commission doesn't mean that it's a single individual or a couple of individuals. Very elaborate setup was given for the commission to prepare the report. And the commission submitted this 287-page report in 1966 to the Minister of Education at that time. The one main recommendation of the commission was standardization of education system on 10+2+3 pattern across the country. Up to starting from the age of 5 or 6, 10 classes in the school level, 2 at the +2 level or the secondary level, senior secondary level, and then 3 at the degree level. This was the pattern. So this was the first commission on education after independence in 1947. And this commission consequently formulated 19 recommendations covering the primary education to the higher education and also the empowerment of the weaker sections. Consequently, that had led to the 1968 policy. A major goal of the examination reform should be to improve the reliability and validity of examination. This was an observation made by the commission that time. So we can see that the education doesn't mean teaching alone. It includes the assessment part also. So any reform we bring in should address that evaluation part or the assessment part in the education and correspondingly the quality part of it. Then the chief minister, the prime minister at that time was Srimati Indira Gandhi. Then after that, maybe in 1986, when Rajiv Gandhi government was formed, Rajiv Gandhi constituted another commission to bring in the new national education policy of 1986. It was with an emphasis on science and technology and the penetration of science and technology into the common man's life. So the government wanted more people educated in science and technology, especially technical education. And then in that process, how the disadvantaged groups can be included in the education. So the special emphasis on the removal of disparities and equalized education opportunity, this was the objective of the 1986 policy. Then in 1992, the government looked at the policies of 1986 and 68 and formulated something called the Common Minimum Program and a series of program of action. I remember when I was in NIT during the 1986 to 91 time, government was asking for the proposals from the institutions to implement various components in the National Education Policy of 1986. NIT Calicut, that time REC had prepared lot of proposals for women education, adult education, research, setting up computer networks. So many things we prepared and submitted to the ministry at that time. Dr. Unnikrishna Pillai and Dr. Mattai were the leaders in preparing that one. There were Dr. Thiruvangadam, Dr. Srinivasan, those people were also there in that team, Dr. P.S. Mani. So we did a lot of work for preparing that proposals, and Dr. Unnikrishna Pillai was the person who formulated the template for the proposal. Now, after that, people were going in that direction of the two policies. The education system did not go any transformation as such, except the inclusion of more components in the education and also expanding the scope for including different sections of the society. Then the NDA government, when it came, it looked at all the policies and then started to have a new policy with a new perspective. And in 2017, there was an attempt by the government to form a, as you can see, a new education plan was made by the Modi government in 2017 with an objective of bringing in a new policy. So there was another development. As you can see, in 2015, the United Nations had adopted the common goals for the sustainability development or sustainable development goals or SDG. There were 17 goals, as you can see in the list. The first one was to eliminate poverty, like that. And the fourth one is quality education. So the principle there was to provide education equitably for all the people, which would lead to development of the each and every human being across the world. So the India has also adopted that sustainable development goals, and SDG 4 was taken as the leading point in formulating the National Education Policy 2020. And this was approved by the Union Cabinet in July 2020. And it outlines India's new education system. This is what Prime Minister had mentioned at that time. And it was also mentioned that the new policy would replace all the previous policies. Now, as we can see, the SDG 4 addressed the new national, SDG 4 was addressed in the national new education policy. We can see the introduction of that policy document and see that government has specifically mentioned that the policy is addressing the SDG 4. Now, just to have a comparison, in the 1968 policy, it was mentioned that it will be advantageous to have a broadly uniform educational structure in all parts of the country. So the significance of this statement can be understood if we look at the scenario that was existing at that point in time. Hello? 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 Hello?
Hello, sir.
Kekao.
Okay, sir.
So the significance comes from the fact that in our country, at different places, people were following different patterns of education. Some were following the US pattern, some were following the UK pattern. So the government wanted to have a standard pattern across the country, and which was adopted was the 10+2+3 pattern. And we have been following it up to now, and still it is there. The reason behind is that why that 15 years duration was chosen is because in the US, the first person to get first degree, they would require 16 years, and in USSR it is 15 years, and in UK it is 16 years. So earlier, our degree was of duration 2 years, so maximum 12 years to 13 years was taken for the first degree. So the learning period was less. That was the reason why the degree was not accepted. So this standardization had made the degree acceptable across the world. So that was the first step of globalizing the Indian education. Then the new education policy that was brought in in 1986, it laid stress on the need for radical reconstruction of the education system to have more emphasis on science and technology. And there is an emphasis on moral values. And the fourth one was the connection between education and life of the common man. That is how the adult education was made part of the regular institutions' activities in the 1986 policy. Then the Program of Action 1992 opened up the education for private sector with a call for more investment. Thereafter, government allowed the private sector to start academic institutions, solely self-financed institutions. Then the scenario changed. So if we look at the education system in India and the employment market from 1947 to 2000 or up to now, the equity and access expanded. More and more people came to the formal education sector, and the number of people graduating also increased because people understood the need for a formal education and a formal degree and a formal qualification. So more and more people started enrolling for that, and a variety of institutions have come into existence in the Indian continent. And then later on, after 1995 or so, the private sector started expanding and their presence increased, and that come to the level of having private universities in India. The quality of the education and the skill set requirements have become matters of concern. So the volume getting enrolled in the education system increased, the job market increased, the skill set requirement had changed, and there was a mismatch in the quality of the people graduating and the quality of people needed by the industry. Perhaps because of the change of science, and changes happen due to the technological developments in the industry side or in the common man's day-to-day life. So the large scale penetration of computer had changed the jobs. We remember long back, maybe 30 years back, every drawing was made by a draftsman, and the engineer's job was only to give a sketch to the draftsman. And the dimensioning would be done by the engineer, and the drawing would again be redrawn by the draftsman. There were typists And in the government offices, there was a section called fair copy section. So the plant operators were there who were standing besides the process plant to look at the process temperature, pressure variations, and then do the manipulations. And those operators were replaced with electronic controllers. And then we had the supervisory control systems or the SCADA systems, PC-based automation systems, and all that one. So that had removed the supervisors from the operator supervision. So the manual system of operation had changed to the automated system. And then people had to change themselves to get adapted to the new job requirements. This was the demand. And people had to become multi-skilled in various areas because the industries never wanted to throw away the people or lay off the people, unskilled people in the new technology area, but they were skilled and deployed in the new job places with new skills or multiple skills. So gradually it has become necessary that everybody should be multi-skilled and not mono-skilled. This was emerged as the requirement. So just for an example, if we look at the life cycle of drawings in the industry, there is the area called the sketch, which is made by the engineer. Then there is a level called a draw by the draftsman. There is a check level by the engineer. There is a dimensioning by the engineer and a review by another engineer. And if there is any modification, the modifications will be sketched again, and then it will go to the drawing again. So this cycle continues until the drawing is accepted for production. So now, if we look at the entire life cycle of the drawing got migrated to the computer. So the couple of people sitting across the world connected to an internet can review the drawings, give the remarks, mark the annotations, and recycle it within the computer system without a draftsman or anybody in the cycle. So the human part in that one got reduced, but the life cycle had become something which a process inside the computer network. So now the situation is that all colleges are not teaching CAD properly, and the students are not learning the drawing as well. So there is a skill gap between the industry's requirement and the common man's skill set. There is another problem which was called the silo problem, which is mentioned across the world, that happened in the higher education sector. We had vertical specializations of the different education sector, and within the education sector itself, there are vertical specializations. And this had led to insufficient knowledge as far as the practical application is considered. Then the skill had become inadequate, and the people's attitude were not up to what is expected in the new development. So on one side, the technological changes had transformed the jobs, but on the other side, education sector proceeded with specializations and simplification of coaching. This is another point to be mentioned. The coaching process got simplified. Many things were thrown away by saying that they were redundant or not necessary. And this was necessary because the massive expansion had happened in the enrollment. The infrastructure could not be multiplicated to cope up with the massive expansion with the same spirit and same, you can say, the pedagogy or the course coaching happened in 1960s or 70s. So engineering students started finding drawing as an unnecessary burden. This is one example only. And the lab practical also had the same fate. The medical students neglected physics and mathematics. Chemistry students found optional subjects as a waste. These are only my observations. And mathematics students never think why they should learn mathematics. or no, one should learn mathematics. So the application part was not emphasized in the learning process. And now there is a requirement because of the multi-skilled requirement. We need to avoid or eliminate the silo problem, and all should promote interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary approaches in education. Whatever domain we take, we cannot go by the vertical specializations. So we need a migration or cross migration or sandwiching of the different disciplines necessary in one education sector. So now the new dimensions in education envisaged in the new National Education Policy 2020 is that the school education starts, the formal school education will start at the age of 3 instead of 6. So 3 to 8 will be divided into two parts. One is the early childhood care education, that is 3 to 6, and then 6 to 8, another level. So the grade 1 and 2 will be completed by the age of 8, which will be called the foundational stage. And from the age of 8 to 11, the grades 3 to 5 will come. So by the age of 11, the student will complete grade 5. And then by the age of 14, student will complete grade 8. And then by the age of 18, the student will complete grade 12. So instead of secondary and senior secondary divisions, we would have a run of grade from 1 to 12. And there is a preparatory stage at the age from 3 to 6. So government says that at each level, the emphasis should be not to have the vertical learning in their own subject, but there should be multidisciplinary learning, allowing people to have greater critical thinking, flexibility, and a student's choice for the subject. So depending on the student's capability or student's interest, there should be flexibility in the selection of the subjects for the studies. This is what is envisaged, and the medium of instruction up to grade 5 can be preferably the local language. So here the issue comes, what would be the problem of interfacing the new student with the higher learning? What could be the language what we have to use as a medium for the higher level classes? These are the issues we have to think about. So the new education policy throws out many issues or many concerns for us to operate it. Then the school student, this is one saying that there will be, hello, there will be 10 bagless days, which is called as informal internship. So this is the division happening in the school education system. So on the left side, we can see that there was no sector before the age of 6, and the age 6 to 16 was the school level up to the 10th class or the secondary level, and 16 to 18 age group will be in the senior secondary level. Now the study start at the age of 3, and then it goes up, and the person would complete the schooling by the age of 18. So there will be a foundational stage, there is a preparatory stage, there is a middle stage, and there is a secondary stage. This will be the 4 divisions as far as the new education policy is considered in the school system. Now, when it comes to the higher education sector, so the policy envisages a total revamping of the educational system. So here, The formal schooling shall be for 15 years, including the formula what we have seen up to the age of 18. And the degree program could be 3 to 4 years. They are advising 4 years duration for the degree program. Then the significant change with respect to the previous policy is the approach of multidisciplinary campuses. Each campus will have multiple disciplines, and there will be a cross flow of knowledge from the domains of the disciplines, so that the persons coming out will have adequate knowledge in different fields of study. So if we look at the existing scheme, the total age or the age at the time of graduation could be 21 or 22. And the new education policy, if we take the graduation age, would be 22. Now, to throw some lights on the various mentions in the policy, that one is regarding the multidisciplinary and holistic undergraduate education, with one campus having multiple disciplines of science, social science, arts, humanities, sports, etc. Then the education system had to encourage creativity and critical thinking, inculcate ethics and human values and the constitutional values. Then there is also a stress that one should be using extensively the technology for enabling the teaching and learning, and also to remove the language barriers. So here the point is that a lot of research had to be going into the use of technology in education at a different level. Then full equity and inclusion as the cornerstone of all the educational decisions, to ensure that all the students are able to thrive in the education system. So this is one observation that is made in the policy. Then another point is that in view of the self-reliance that is envisaged in the government's policy, the research should be more productive and innovative. So the research had to be outstanding, totally replacing the import or substituting the import in our day-to-day requirements. And also the education system should create a respect in the people's mind about the India's cultural heritage and educational knowledge systems of the past. Most important one and the more challenging one is to increase the gross enrollment ratio from the present rate of 26% to 50% by 2035. So the challenges, if we consider, the government wants an expansion of capacity to increase the GER to 50%. So if we consider the share of the Indian engineering and technology education sector, that is where we are dealing with, it should also increase the GER at least by 200%. So if we look at it, some survey were done, and it found that every year some 8 lakhs of people are there in the engineering education alone. So that 8 lakhs will have to become 16 lakhs, so that we will share that 50% have the share of the increase in GER to 50%. So this is the capacity expansion needed in the engineering education sector to increase the annual intake from 8 lakhs to 16 lakhs. And now the more challenging one aspect is that the expansion, capacity expansion or doubling should happen in a time period of 10 to 15 years. By 2035 or 2040, this should happen. Now, the interesting part of it is that the GER increased to 26% in a period of 73 years after independence. So now we want an expansion from 26% to 50% in 20 to 30 years. So how much is the investment? How much is the drive? How much is the research that had to go into? These are the challenges in the new education policy. Now, another point is that the system of affiliated colleges will be phased out in 15 years, and the colleges will be given greater autonomy and power to grant degrees. The deemed university status will end. And the government want to normalize the quality by conducting a national testing using a national testing agency. And the government says that it would come into being in 2022. Now, having seen all this one, how the teaching and learning should be changed in the light of the new education policy. So if we look at the introduction of the new education policy, there is a mention about global ecosystem. That means our people should be competent enough to be employed anywhere in the world. Then there is a mention about critical thinking. There is a mention about multidisciplinary learning. And there is a mention about learning immersive and experiential. So these aspects makes us to think in a slightly or largely different way about how we impart education. And the fifth aspect is inculcating right kind of values in the learners. And another point is that focus is on less on content, but more on learning. So with less content, how to make learning more effective and more inclusive, more, you can say, elaborate. And how to think critically, how to solve the problem, how can be creative and multidisciplinary, how to adapt and innovate, and how to absorb the new knowledge in a changing world. These are the points which education sector had to consider. So now, when it comes to engineering education, what we have is vertical specializations, civil engineering, computer engineering, all these specializations happen in a vertical way without much of a cross-talk. Though we have some component of every discipline in every curriculum of every degree program, there is no actual internalization of the concepts happening to have a multidisciplinary learning. So that way, if we look at, there are around 30 engineering disciplines in India. More than 30 degree programs are there. Because of the multi-branded, co-branded, sandwiched and blended degree programs like electronics and communication, computer science and engineering, electrical and electronics, electrical and computer engineering, instrumentation and control engineering. So many co-branding has been done in the degree programs. That way we have many degree programs happening mostly in a vertical way without much of a multidisciplinary learning. So we have to get prepared for the future. If we are going with the adoption of the new education policy, we have to get prepared for the new education policy. So the challenges are, we have seen what are the challenges. And then the point is that the time to realize the objectives of the policy is very limited, 15 to 20 years. So how we will accomplish it? That would be only possible through experimentation and research. How shall we make engineering education immersive for a massive intake of 16 lakhs per year in a country like India? And then where we will find employment? Employment, we may not be able to give the standard employment in the industries or in the government. So should be an expansion in the employment opportunities. So the way out is to promote entrepreneurship and innovations. And then that will happen only if the learning is immersive. And then the project-based learning can be promoted at the early stage of second years. Then the colleges will have to allow for collaboration with those who can guide the student or who can mentor the student. And then the students will have to be linked to the startups and entrepreneurs so that the student will have an entrepreneurial mind. So from my thought, I would say that even if a student or a teacher is not becoming an entrepreneur, we have to create the mind of an engineer, an entrepreneur, or an innovator in the minds of the student as well as the teacher. So allow them to collaborate. And this is what something we can do immediately, and it's already being done. The connection with the startups and innovations and the so-called incubations, everything happening in the academic arena. So that already started. So we have to make it more effective. Now, another concern is to give the job. Employment rate in education, engineering education sector will have to increase. Then only the education scheme, the programs will have a meaning. Incubation had to happen, something as a common in every campuses. Innovation should be helped to take the wings by promoting the innovators. More initiatives should happen to promote innovations and startup in the campuses. Teachers should become the grand enablers. Though there is a change in the role of a teacher on the campus. So the engineer who is coming out from the engineering college should be equipped to think this way. What to think, how to think, when to think, and what to do after he gets the answer. This is critical thinking, problem solving. These are the qualities that will lead to these qualifications for the graduate. So the teaching should be to have these qualities. So the teacher has a challenge not only to deal with the multidisciplinary skills, but also to make the learner a good engineer. So naturally, we would need new teaching styles and a deeper understanding of the learner. So the learner may be having variety or different capabilities. So the teacher should understand, or the education system should understand the learner and then train them according to that capabilities. So there is a need for changing or training the teachers. Teachers will have to change in the light of the new demand from the new education policy. So they will have to be trained for delivering the new requirements as per the new education policy. So that they will be delivering the knowledge and the skill adequately to the student. Now, there is another challenge when we talk about formal education. The assessment is integral to the teaching part. So we talk about multiple skills or multi-skills, employability, innovation, and all that. So how we would change the modalities of assessment to assess employability, assess innovations, assess the multiple skills in the particular domain of education, specifically to the engineering education. So if we borrow the terms of the past, the learning happens in the cognitive domain, affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. So this is true for all the disciplines. So engineering teaching should address the learning happening in the three domains equally well. So the teacher will have to have a holistic lesson developed to have the learning happening in the three domains in constructing the learning task for the student. So the teacher had to define the learning outcomes and then design the lesson in a holistic way to acquire or to realize that objective. So then the diversity in such learning tasks will help in creating comparatively well-rounded learning experience that means a number of learning styles and learning modalities. So people have understood this one, but how to operationalize it in the Indian context is something that we need to address. So why it is needed is because an increased level of diversity in the delivery of lessons help engage students as well as create more neural networks and pathways that help in the recollection of information and events. So the learning becomes experiential and more involved or immersive. So the teacher will have to enable and facilitate that. That is what is expected now. And how to enable effective learning. So one part is critical thinking, to get the people involved in the process of thinking so that their effective domain will get strengthened. So these are some of the things I would make here. Everybody needs the capacity for critical thinking in their field of work, and an engineer should definitely have it. So here, to create that habit of critical thinking or to enable people to think in that direction, reference to the examples of engineering wonders perhaps can help. So this, though there was a subject called History of Science and Technology that was not taught with the spirit of encouraging critical thinking or enabling critical thinking. That was just a subject to read and write the examinations. But now we need to have a different look to have the, you can say, the quality of critical thinking in the graduate. So here, just one example out of my interest, I am putting here two bridges. One is in Canada, that is the Rainbow Bridge of Niagara. And you can see the profile of the bridge. And this is another bridge near to Calicut, that is the Tusharagiri Bridge. And you can see the similarity between the two and how well it looks alike. And the two places have two different requirements. In the case of Tusharagiri, there is a rush of water during the monsoon. And in the Niagara River, there is continuous flow, either full flow or ice. So they are not able to construct the pier and construct the bridge in the conventional way. So they use an altogether different design, inverted arch model for the Rainbow Bridge. And the same, you can see that it is used here in Tusharagiri Bridge. So here, the engineers are borrowing ideas from somewhere, and that idea was originated in the first place after a lot of thinking. And there is a beautiful history mentioned in the internet about the Rainbow Bridge. The first bridge was constructed in 1800s using iron, and then later on with the concrete. People can read that. The history, the story is very beautiful to read. Then why critical thinking is needed in engineering? Because in many actions of engineering profession, that would rely on clear, concise, and rational decisions, and those decisions only come out through a structured process of thought. There are two things. One is the engineering design, and the decisions related to engineering design is guided by the design codes or the data books and the design principles. or design patterns as well. But there are other issues like cost, emotions, like how to get the people involved and what would be the consequence of having the aesthetic part of the designs. Then the design, you can add the sustainability part here. So how these things will be incorporated along with the engineering design so that many aspects, the cost, the sustainability, the impact on the environment, all will be considered in the design. So this is what we call as critical thinking. And now there is a subject called design thinking to address these issues. So here comes the many options or many possible solutions, and one had to take the best solution. And that is what critical thinking is talking about. So for that, the engineer will have to be exposed to variety of situations, and they should be enabled with the experience either through collaborations or on self-learning. So this aspect lead to what an issue called the employability. And now the industries, perhaps all the industries are looking forward to employing the new recruit as a full-fledged engineer from day one. So that employability part needs a change in the strategies for teaching and learning. Okay, I skip this one, this slide. And the next skill is the problem solving skills. The problem solving skill means some issues have happened or some issues are likely to happen. So we look at that problem from the different perspectives or different dimensions. And this already many people have worked on this one and many tools have been developed already. There are many we can find the cause effect analysis, failure mode analysis, criticality analysis. There are many root cause analysis. These are all the tools, structured tools. You can, I will repeat that these are the structured tools available for problem solving in the industry. So this had to be, so engineers would need these tools and they should have the readiness to analyze the problem using these tools. So the education system as an enabler, employee. So if we look at this in a different way, in the connecting with the current scenario and the forthcoming scenario, the employment rate in education sector had dropped significantly. And at the same time, when we interact with the employers or the people from industry, they say that they are hunting for people with proper skill set. So what is there is no dearth of opportunity. Only thing is that the graduates are not simply getting placed. So that means the opportunities are remaining as vacant positions without getting filled by the proper recruit. Another point is that the innovations and startup are not happening like something regular. So there had to be something which would eliminate this condition. Innovations fail to take wings. This situation should be eliminated. And lot of initiatives are happening in the government to promote innovation and startup. There are many tools, as I mentioned earlier, there are many tools and software platforms like simulation, modeling, analysis, etc. So if we incorporate them into the curriculum in a proper way, perhaps that would lead to higher employability. Now, my suggestion is that to inculcate the attitude of startup or entrepreneurship, we need to create a corporate culture that everybody is working with a time frame. Everybody is working with a target, working with a goal. both the teacher and the student, they all work with the target and outcome. So with that, perhaps the situation on the campus could change. So I would say that from my own personal observation, I would say that both teacher and the student should feel that they are engineers and should act accordingly in learning and practicing what they learn. Rather than just reading, learning, and writing the examination and finishing it off there and looking for some other training to join a job, we should have a different mindset where we learn and we practice. So coming towards the end, what we need is, from the new education policy's perspective, imparting an education that adequately addresses and ensures higher order total learning. So I would use the word higher order total learning. That is what need to expect or need to have in the respective engineering disciplines. And then we should work for a non-linear capacity expansion from 26% to 50% in the period of 15 to 20 years, facilitating multidisciplinary knowledge, right attitude, adequate psychomotor learning and skills. Then the new policy envisages multiple entry and multiple exit in the degree programs. So I have another point here. I will mention it one by one. Providing adequate skills and knowledge with a blend of high level of enrichment in the values and ethics. Enabling open distance learning. These are all mentioned in the new education policy. So the open distance learning is not for creating more graduates in a distance mode of learning, but it can be for allowing the people to complete the degree program even if they opt out in between, in the midway. In the multiple exit scheme, if a person goes with a diploma, he should be allowed to come back and complete the degree or master's. So that way, the open distance learning could be a useful or viable solution for that. Now, another point is that the finding employment for the increased number of graduates. We mentioned that the intake will have to increase to 16 lakhs. That means 16 lakhs of engineers would come out every year. So where these engineers would go? So for that, we need to have a mechanism where we would tell the industry that the curriculum is up to date and it is empowering and adequately providing the training to make the graduate employable by the conventional industries and the modern industries as well. So this is something which as an engineering college or engineering educator, I find it something of great importance and very difficult to solve. And to summarize, the new education policy envisages higher education institutions to be multidisciplinary, keeping this in perspective, the engineering institutions can offer undergraduate programs which adequately provide a flexible curriculum without losing the essence of discipline, core skill set, and also sensitize students about the need for a wider view about the engineering learning to have a multi-skilled learning. Then design graduate programs that are more multidisciplinary in nature to include the new emerging tech areas called the smart cities, smart mobility, polymer biosystem engineering, integrated sensor system, cyber physical system, and many things which are multidisciplinary in nature. Then develop high quality support centers for socially and economically and disadvantaged groups. This is also important in the light of the new education policy. And then to globalize the curriculum. Higher education institutions will have to think in such a way that they have a globalized curriculum. So for that, there are two terms used in the new education policy called the universalization of education and globalization of education. So I humbly put my definitions. Universalization means ideally the gross enrollment ratio should reach 100%. In the government is expecting 100% GER in the school level, but if we say universalization happens means reaching to everybody, no one will be left behind. So ideally the GER should reach 100%. And globalization happens when our graduates can move across the world, move across the world seamlessly and are equally respected everywhere for having global competency. So the globalization of the Indian education system has another advantage that the learners from other country would come to India for study purpose. So there will be a cross flow of students from India to abroad as employees, or you can say the trained manpower, and there will be learners coming into India to study in the Indian continent in the different institutions. So the globalization would help that. So there are many questions. When can we say that a graduate is employable? This is one question. What are the exact reasons for low quality in the educated staff of the present one? Why there is a concern for employability? Where to start in the education system to address the issue of low employability? And for that, we need a thorough investigation into the reasons for low employability and how we can say that employability will be enhanced if we use multidisciplinary learning that is perceived in the new education policy. And then we can have another look at the sustainability development goals. Each of the goal needs a lot of research and development. So the table shows the population in different countries. So if we take India, the population is roughly 130 crore and the median age is 28. But US has a median age of 38 and Russia has a median age of 40. So we have a demographic dividend happening with a good portion of our population at the employable age. So there is need for an expanded learning or education and training system. And especially when we consider engineering, all these countries would need engineers, and we have a good, you can say, the population at the younger age who can be trained and exported to the other countries. So we have to think globally and produce global engineers rather than local engineers. So where the IEEE can also contribute, this is again my own personal observations. IEEE being the global leader in standards and knowledge dissemination, it can facilitate a mechanism for helping the Indian academia. So IEEE can enable the Indian faculty. There are many faculty development program already happening under the banner of IEEE, but it can be expanded in the light of the new education policy so that the teachers can imbibe the new teaching styles necessary for the new realm of multidisciplinary education according to the new education policy. And of course, IEEE has a large talent pool across the globe. Let us engage all of them to design a curriculum with a global flavor that we can globalize the Indian education, but at the same time, it will not lose its Indian relevance. IEEE can employ their global resources for suggesting a framework for the campuses of Indian institutions which can cater to the needs under the new education policy. Maybe that IEEE can take the cues from the different institutions across the world and then devise a model for the Indian context according to the new requirements in the new education policy. So a regular Indian education conference by IEEE could be something desirable. There is a global education conference being held under the banner of IEEE in US. So similarly, in the context of new education policy, IEEE India can think about an education conference series at the section level or the India Council level to address the new challenges happening in the Indian context. So with this, I say that I would be closing now. I acknowledge all the sources of information whichever I have quoted here. I thank IEEE Malabar subsection and Dr. Sabik for the kind invitation to spend time with you in this evening, this beautiful evening. And these are some of the links which I have used here to take some points for my discussion here. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, the opportunities for the participants to ask their doubts or queries, if any. Sir is with us for a few more minutes. You can ask your queries, if any, either through the chat box or unmuting your mic. Is there any queries? Nobody is responding. I think there is no doubts.
Sir, Sean here.
Sean, tell me.
Yeah, sir. So that was a very insightful session. Thanks for that. So, sir, my doubt is this. So, when the new policy emphasis is on entrepreneurship and innovation, an area which faculties are not touched with. I mean, they
Yes.
are morely concentrated into the research part and all. So,
Yeah.
In that case, how will the faculties be able to cater that need of the students as well as the policy?
Here the point is that research is needed for finding new knowledge. If we use the old term in the new context, research is for finding new knowledge in the science which are not so far found. So that is necessary for the furtherance of science and technology. But entrepreneurship happens when the system infrastructure is available for converting idea to at least a tabletop prototype. Converting idea to prototype, that very much needed, and many of in the Indian context, I find it very, very rare. And even if it is there, IITs are having IDDCs, Industrial Design and Development Center. If we go there, something is happening, but not in a volume what is necessary for a massive expansion of innovations. So one requirement is that the infrastructure should expand, the research infrastructure should expand, then the quality manpower should be available for the workmanship needed for converting idea to prototype. So if this happens, then the teachers alone will not be able to help in the prototyping part. We need workmanship, we need supporting staff, we need quality manpower in that level. That is necessary. There are isolated cases which I know people have helped the students as well as the teachers to convert their idea to the prototype. So that part, the supporting staff with quality skills and workmanship, if that is also there, academic institutions can perhaps think about expanding this part, entrepreneurship as well as innovations. This is my feeling. Teachers alone will not be able to do that part.
Thank you, sir.
Any other queries? Participants, please ask your questions now. Otherwise, we can continue.
I think Dr. Mohandas is also giving a talk.
Okay. So it was, sir, it was really an informative session, as the topic is very general and it is very relevant to the current education systems. And sir has explained it in a very basic, that is, it is very, the relevancy of this national education policy to the engineering education perspective. That is about opportunities and the challenges, and how the teachers and the students to be prepared for solving the current problems or challenges that is faced by the engineering education systems, and how to change our learning style and modalities and teaching methods, etc. And the importance of developing innovation and entrepreneurship centers in education institutions, and also the relevancy of critical thinking from the students' side. All these aspects sir has explained in a very nice manner. So the overall session was very helpful to the audience. I hope all the participants have benefited a lot from this session. Thank you, sir, for accepting the invitation for this talk and giving this wonderful lecture to us. I also thank all the participants who made this session very active, and those who have those who are joined through this virtual platform for this session. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we'll close now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Yes, sir. You can leave.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.